often have you postponed things in the name of perfection? Well, let me repeat that question again. How often have you postponed things in the name of perfection? Well, today I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why you shouldn't postpone things but have progress over perfection. And well, let's start with the first one. I believe that maybe that is the most important one, because when you start doing something, you do it for a reason. So for me, going live has to do with letting people know that it's important to be heard, to get your message out there, that there is perspective, and that it's so important that there's clarity in communication, whether it is receiving or sending. And a lot of people from, well, and I was one of those, I still am one of those every now and then. We have encountered that we are not taken seriously, and that can have major repercussions. So by going live, I want to give that message that you are good enough and that we don't have to be perfect. So I have been going back and forth this week about, okay, shouldn't I be going to the hairdressers first? I mean, my hair is blue, but you usually see it in the sunlight, but right now you don't see it very well. I really need to get it dyed blue again. And here's the thing. When I look at certain television series, I can see people just like me with the dark hair and then that gray, well, what shall we call it? That gray bit of hair. And actually, I think it's charming. I mean, yes, we do get older. The thing is, though, that I was a little bit startled when I saw how much grayer I've become. I'll honestly say. But then again, I'm the one who is about authenticity. And how authentic am I if I'm going to say, no, I need to go to the hairdressers first before I actually go live? Well, you could question a little bit about my authenticity. I'll give you that much. So, knowing that this is about perspective and absolutely believing that there's always someone out there who needs to hear this message, whether it's today or maybe in 10 years. It doesn't matter, because it's going to be out there on YouTube and it's going to remain out there on YouTube. So when you think about why you want to do something, especially when you want to do it consistently, well, go back. What was your vision? What is your vision? Maybe something has shifted. What has shifted? And how can you tweak it? So that's my number one thing. Knowing why you do things. And actually, that applies to everything. It's so important to know what you are doing, what your reason for doing something is. And I believe that if we do things with more attention during the day, every day anew, that our life would look so different. Now, some of you may know that I'm doing this challenge, Rewrite Your Inner Story. And it's based on what other people are telling us. And we have incorporated that. Now it's up to us to either believe it or go against it. And well, if we talk about how we view things and why we do certain things, then I bet that we are going against that voice that isn't even ours. Something to think about. So what do you tell yourself? What do you tell yourself regularly? What did you say to yourself you were going to do and you didn't do? So I'll say straight away, I skipped last week's. I can't even say it's Friday Night Live. So officially, I can still say it's Sunday Night Live because somewhere on the world, as in the US, it's still before midnight. So even though when here in Europe, it's already Monday morning, but I adjusted my schedule somewhat. So I work during the night. And actually, I was planning on going live way earlier, but I wanted to get some things done. And it ended up in a discussion which I had, and discussion with an AI, no less. So then at some point I was like, you know what? I'm just going to flip things. And so here I am going live. I've done it more often around this time. And, for the people in Europe, it might actually be kind of nice because they're waking up and they can start the week fresh with this weekly live, because it's all about motivation, right? So that was the first reason. So link back to your why. Why are you doing certain things? Why was it important to you? Why is it important to you? Then we go to number 2. And that's actually a question you can look from perspectives of what if you don't do it and what if you do it. So let's start with what if you don't do it. Now, I told you that back in the days, and this is a lesson learned, and it was a hard lesson, and I haven't forgotten about it. But the lesson learned is that if I don't do this regularly, as in every week, and yes, I allow myself a little bit of leniency when it comes to whether I'm doing it on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Oh, we have Sina's trying to come in. I'm so happy that I put this little elastic band on the doorknob, so the door closes again when he comes in, which is especially important since the airco unit is on. So since a few days we actually have very good weather, and he's hearing me talk, so he's like, oh, I need to see what's going on, I need to check it out. So yeah, there he is. Well, anyway, if I don't do it, and like I said, been there, done that, got the shirt, didn't want it, but it happened, I know that because I didn't do it, it's so easy to say, well, you know what, let's not do it again. And then we basically keep postponing because, well, people are now used to you not doing it. But how about the other side, the flip side of that same question? Maybe people are waiting for you to go do it again and to go live again, or whatever it is that you promised you would do. So maybe you are writing like a weekly blog post. Maybe it's something like visiting people. I don't know what you've planned on doing, but if people are counting on you and you don't do it, for holidays, and yes, last weekend, of course, we had to do with Pentecost Sunday and Monday. And I could tell that a lot of people prior to the weekend already had their days taken off. So, yeah, sure, holidays are a good reason, but even so, it's because of being in Chicago a couple of years ago that I actually stopped doing it altogether until about a year ago. So I promised myself not to ever do it again. Last week I skipped. There were a bunch of reasons for it. One had to do with a party that always throws me off. The other one had to do with the Rewrite Your Inner Story challenge. I've been working on it so hard. And of course, there's always a little bit linked to, do I have enough energy? But we can also wonder how much of it is an excuse. Now, I'll honestly say, I always have this battle when it comes to energy, but I also know I can summon the energy. So if I know I can summon the energy, why not do it? Is it because I want to look perfect for you? Well, we discussed that when it came to the first reason. That's not good enough. When you know your why, when you have a certain vision, a certain mission for doing things, then perfection is not necessary. Perfection is something that you develop while doing it. Okay, so what happens if you don't do it? Well, chances are really real that you quit doing it. So I want you to go back to a moment in time that you still did certain things and at some point you stopped doing it. Whether it is because you fell ill, maybe you moved, something changed in your weekly schedule, maybe you hooked up with someone. So what could have been a reason that you stopped doing something that you normally do? And how can you get back to doing it again? I assume it must have been important, otherwise you wouldn't have done it. But let's put it this way, if you don't want to do it anymore, and here's the emphasis on you don't want to, and you know why, you have a valid reason. But just because you didn't have the time or you wanted it to be perfect, that's not a good reason. So what happens if you do it? Well, you train a muscle. It's the muscle of repetition, basically. And how more often you do it, the easier things get. So I know I can go live and I don't need that much to go live. But I also know that it's nice to have a few reasons to talk about certain things or to have at least a framework. And sometimes that's my downfall too. But I want to do it so you get value. And the question, of course, is, do you get less value when I'm a little more unprepared? I don't think necessarily that it is that you get less value, because I'll keep talking anyway. But I do believe that when it comes to going from one thing to the next one, that might make a big difference, because now I know I need to focus on this specific thing. And when I just do things by heart, it might be in a random order, and I come back to something and then I go to another thing and then I'll come back to it. I always do come back to the main thing that I want to talk about. But yes, I get that for people it can be a little bit of a hassle to actually follow what I'm saying. Now, number 3, and this is a very important one. Seeds become weeds. Seeds of doubt become weeds. So if we think about ourselves and our mind, so a lot of people say our body is our temple. What do you put in and what do you expect to get out? And well, if you don't take good care of yourself, then at some point it will catch up with you. Especially when we get older, it's not that easy anymore to regain, for instance, muscle mass, to lose weight, to regain stability. And last week or the week before, I don't know, I got this message on my phone, and it said, "You have not walked enough. You run the risk of losing stability." And I was like, duh, how do you think that, or why do you think that I haven't walked enough? Maybe because my stability went haywire like over 4 or 5 weeks ago, maybe even 6. And the good news, by the way, is that a couple of days ago, I went to the beach. It started out last week, actually, when I went through the mall, and I realized that it felt like I was walking like a 90-year-old. I wasn't stable at all, but I thought I was going to go in really quickly to get a little something. And then the really quickly became an entire walk through the mall, because I wasn't sure which direction to go to. So, of course, I took the detour. But apart from that, I also needed to check some other stores too. And I ended up at the first one. basically. But then at least I was informed about what it is I was going to do, and I knew I was going to do it. It was weird. It was uncertain. It felt off to be walking without crutches or braces, for that matter. At some point, I did sit down somewhere to have something. I think it was a smoothie and a sandwich. And I was proud of myself. I actually posted something on Instagram about it. And yesterday, or the day before, when I went to the beach, I actually went somewhere else too before that. And I noticed, like, yeah, I'm able to walk without crutches again, short distances, of course. But, those short distances, it was a long time ago that I actually walked a short distance without crutches. So that actually felt good. Now, I do tell you, I will tell you that when I did go to the beach, that I eventually did take my crutches with me, which was a good thing, because the walk, even though for most people it's like a walk in the park, I guess pun intended, for me it's always like a little bit of a struggle, but I am so proud when I actually get to do it. So this seed doesn't turn into wheat, it does turn into a flower. And, well, hopefully it becomes a blossoming tree. Oh, that would be nice if you think about it. The Japanese trees with the cherry blossom. Well, just imagine that one. So just went somewhere for a moment because I love what they look like, but I also realized that they only blossom like for a few weeks a year. So I was like, was that the best example? Well, in my case, I never know what to expect, but I have been very aware of that my stability is improving, and I cannot say anything else, but I'm so grateful for it. Now, seeds becoming weeds, that also can relate to doubt. And actually, I was dealing with one of those seeds, and I actually told you about it already, which had to do with, I really need to go to the hairdressers. Now, one of the reasons why I kept it blue is not just because I like blue, but becoming gray and having your hair dyed red. And please note that when you have black hair, that dyeing it red is kind of hard. It usually means that I have to bleach part of my hair. So there's part of it that is reddish, and just like with the blue color, you only see it when I'm actually standing outside and the sunlight is shining through my hair. But when there's gray involved, it shows. It shows badly. I remember having my first gray hair. It was a long one. And I was like, you need to dye it. And my hairdresser said, no, we are going to wait till it's 1/3. Well, and I could have waited till now. I still don't think it's 1/3, but it's getting there. That much I know. So, yeah, that's doubt. Do I look good enough? Because one of my fears, and I'll just throw it out there, and I saw it during the Dickens process, which is from Tony Robbins. So Dickens process is when you go really deep. We did it with 13,000 people, and you face your biggest fear. And that's based on what other people have been telling you, usually. Then we get back to the inner story, right? And for me, it was, I'm not good enough, which, well, you choose a topic or an area in life and it applies. I did pretty well in school, most of the time, not always, but most of the time. My brother did excellent in school, and he would come home. He was very disciplined, He still is very disciplined, by the way. I'm the opposite of him. And he would go do his homework. What my mother didn't know is I would do my homework during class. So she didn't see me do homework. So she assumed I was an average student, which is not entirely correct, as in it wasn't correct at all. Now, of course, people made fun of me because of my looks growing up. Dark hair, dark brown eyes. That wasn't common, not over here in the Netherlands. I mean, everyone had blonde hair or red hair and blue or green eyes, occasionally brown eyes, but nothing like me. So there was one other student who had a similar background, Dutch Indonesian, but that was about it. So the not being good enough, that was programmed in my mind from a young age, early on. And I still have to fight it every now and then. So I'm way more relaxed. I'm over half a century old. That puts things in perspective, I can really tell you. I look at things really differently. But having said so, it does creep in every now and then. And seeing my gray hair, I was like, oh, I really need to go to the hairdressers. And I've been postponing it a little bit due to circumstances. And for me, it's related to, but how do I get across? Do I look like someone who's not taking good care of myself? I mean, I'm a therapist, I'm a coach, I support people. So I think it's important to show self-care. And now I know that a lot of people my age at some point choose to not dye their hair anymore and just let the gray let the gray show up, let's put it that way. And I also know that there are people who are like, yeah, until. And what's that moment until? And again, it's also about authenticity. So when I say I need to go live, looking all perfect, and by the way, it's one of the reasons why I don't wear makeup, because once people get used to makeup, and this was a little joke back in the days, the difference is so huge compared when you don't. So it was easier for me not to wear any makeup, and having black eyelashes, that's quite an advantage. I'll say that, I'll admit that. So today I was planning on recording all these videos, and it was like, I don't want to be wearing my glasses doing so. And I was like, yeah, but I need to go live. I've been postponing it way too long. So, just go do it with your glasses on. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I've got multiple pairs of glasses, I'll honestly say. So there are 3 which I use quite frequently. And this one is the one I use when I do not have to drive during the night, because then I have another one with specific glasses I can put in front of them. And I also have one which I usually use when I'm going to bed, or, just when I do not go outside. It's just a little bit easier, but there are scratches on the glasses and everything. So, and this one has been selected to like, yeah, I like the frame, but it's very, very delicate. So seeds can become weeds. We don't want that. We want to take care of ourselves, our mind, our body, our habits. And I want you to think about, when did you have seeds turn into weeds? What happened? And is there any way that you can go back to removing those weeds and start planting new seeds? Now, I am aware that when you want to remove weeds, that they can have roots which can go really deep and really layered. So chances are that it will take you a while before you actually have weeded out all the weeds. But if you remain consistent and you do it diligently, then yes, at some point you will have it done. And what would it look like when you have your own nice garden? And again, I don't mean it literally, but what you reap is what you sow. How you take care of yourself shows. So that's something to think about. And I want you to really think about that one thing that really needs attention at the moment. So what could use some attention on your part and why? And then we get back to the first question, right? Why do you do the things that you do? Now, I mentioned something earlier. I used to go live on Friday Night Live, and then I wanted to do it with other people, and then they didn't show up, or it didn't work out. And at some point I was like, okay, the easiest thing for me is to do it straight after midnight. So before midnight, there's, for instance, the Duolingo that needs to be done. And nowadays we have the 5 to Thrive as well from Brandon Burchard. If you have the Growth Day app, if you don't have it, I can highly recommend it. If you want the link, let me know. But those are things that need to be done, especially when we talk about Friday. Friday became so chaotic at some point because I would go to the physical therapist, then I would go see a client, then I would go back home to the house, I would play drums, and well, the cat needed her medication at a certain amount of certain point in time. But here's the thing, I cannot go live at the house because the internet doesn't work that very well. So it's best to go here. And then when I go here and they are having a party on the other side of the wall, well, then I'm basically done with all the things. And well, then we get back to the question, is there ever such a thing as right time? And well, I said, okay, basically it's the Friday Night Live, but if it happens to be in the weekend, then it's good enough. And I sort of made a compromise. As long as it's before midnight in the US, then I consider it in the weekend. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't do it when it's later. That's not a good enough reason. But last week, like I said, there was Pentecost Sunday and Monday, but also, and there was a party going on Friday, which didn't work very well either. So I was planning on going live, and then I was so distracted with working on the challenge that I just didn't get around to doing it. So I was like, this weekend I am going to do it, but because if I don't, I know what's going to happen. Then I'm going to postpone it, and then I won't be doing it anymore at all. Now, we don't want that. So as for all the other things, I talked about that too. Is it about how we look, how we get across? Is it about the amount of energy? And for you, what is that one thing that you want to do? And what is your reason for not doing it? So when I talk, for instance, about playing drums, I play drums when nobody's at home. Now, last weekend or last Friday, I was like, okay, I'm going to play drums. And I looked at my drum kit, and the front legs of the kit, so it's, how do you call it? It's like in a circle. It's a circular frame, half a circle. And for some reason, it didn't hold up anymore. So I was looking at it, and the more I pulled it back up again and tried to adjust it, the more it just went down. And I was like, well, this is not going to work. I shouldn't even try fixing this. And I was like, why is this happening? So I ended up playing on my cajon. And the thing with the cajon is it's on the other side of the room, and it makes a bit more noise. So I was like, well, I did do it, and it's, it does take its toll uh, on my back in this case. Well, basically, anyone who's not used to sitting on a cajon will actually notice it at some point. But it was kind of nice to be doing it. So it made me think about, okay, what else can I do? If I can't do one thing, what else can I do instead? And so when we talk about progress over perfection, it's not a reason that I put on the list, but if for some reason the timing is not right, then you can wonder, what can I do instead? So you still have that vibe going on. It's just like moving. When I cannot walk, I like to ride my bike. And if for some reason I do have to take the car, then I'll see what I can do in order to have some movement. And again, my stability is not like most other people's. So I have to take into consideration what I can do. But then when it comes to timing, yeah, it's about thinking about planning, or at least knowing what's the last moment I can do certain things. So be aware of what you want to do during the day and how you're going to plan it. Now, the last reason is, what kind of other motivation can you have to go do certain things? Now, in my case, it's obvious. I already talked about it a few times, and it is the Rewrite Your Inner Story Challenge 2.0. Sounds kind of nice to actually say 2.0. So I already did a Rewrite Your Inner Story Challenge previously, and I didn't have everything in order back then. So I was like, okay, I want to change certain things to have them in order this time around. And I have to admit that the more that I work on it, the more I like what it's like. I'm coming up with things I didn't think about before. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I never looked at it this way. And I think it's getting better and better. But then we get back to the progress over perfection. So the question is, how long do you wait with getting stuff out there? So does it need to be perfect? Well, hopefully by now you have concluded that things do not have to be perfect, unless, of course, your life depends on it or someone else's life depends on it. That's a whole different ballgame. But when it comes to, for instance, showing up live or writing a little something, you can always improve it. And there's this song which comes to mind. Here We Go Again from Whitesnake. And unless I'm mistaken with that title, I'm pretty sure there were a couple of songs, but especially also this one here was redone over and over and over again. And well, I have to agree that I did like the newer versions every time. So tying this back to the very first reason, I said one of the reasons that I go live, or the main reason, is that I know that someone out there needs to hear my story, and they need to hear that they are good enough the way they are, that they are worth it. And well, that has to do with how we look at ourselves, what we have been told, what others still keep telling us, and unfortunately what we repeat when it comes to what people are telling us. And that's what the inner story is about. It's about things that stuck with us, things that happened when we were younger, when, things left an imprint, a mark on us. And we thought that reacting in a certain way was the best way to do it. Now, growing up, we know that certain things aren't the right way at all, and they're working against us. But we are so used to thinking along in a certain way about ourselves or about things we do, which is still about ourselves, that basically we accept it as the norm. And the question, of course, is it the norm? And when I've done a lot of challenges, but when I started talking about this one, I could tell there was a difference, because the inner story is so important to me, because I know that so many people have inner stories which do not add up. And I was like, no, I'm going to continue with this one. So later today or later tomorrow, depends on how you look at it, it will actually go live. This time I do have a link. It's quite simple, actually. It's ladylexi.com/rewrite your inner story. And then you can register for it. And you will instantly get an email with a roadmap, which is going to ask you a number of questions, which get into beliefs and habits, and also about the things you didn't do. So remember, I asked you a couple of questions. Well, when you go to the roadmap, there are even more. And maybe this is a good moment to actually think about it. What did you want to do? And what's something you've never done, what you said you wanted to do, and why? And then we get back to one of the other reasons. When is the right time? And how well do you take care of yourself? I often use this example, but it's like, when you don't take good care of yourself, then how can you take care of others? If you are on a plane and you need to put on your oxygen mask, it's no use to put the oxygen mask on your child first and then passing out yourself and not being able to care of your child anymore. Whereas if you take care of yourself first, then you can still help your child. Might feel a bit counterintuitive because you want to protect your child over yourself, but yes, we are the basis, we are the rock. And well, especially when you're the parent, well, if you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of others? And maybe you're not a parent, maybe there are other people counting on you. And maybe it's about the occasional person that you meet up with or encounter somewhere, and just give a smile. You never know. Getting back to the Rewrite Your Inner Story challenge. In the last couple of weeks, and that's why you actually see a jumping bunny here. A jumping bunny represents my inner kid. I usually say my adopted inner kid. And then I was asked when Jumping Bunny showed up. And quite honestly, she might be longer with me than I actually gave her credit for. I'm not sure, but what I do know is that nowadays, this inner child, I want to keep her safe, but I also know that I shouldn't be too guarded. And what we have been experimenting with, and that was actually kind of cool, is I noticed that when I just talk and I let things come spontaneously, that's why I said basically I can go live without any preparation. It's just that I go back and forth about certain topics, although, like I said, I do come back to the main topic. I'll always come back to the main topic, but I know it can be confusing at times for other people. Not for everyone, but for some out there. So that's why I like to use a little framework, or I want to use a framework, period. So what I started doing was it's for me, it's really easy to just let jumping bunny talk. And sometimes we need certain keywords to start writing or to start saying something. But it's like this thought pops up, and then, I'll just run with it. And when it comes to imagination and visualization, it's such a blessing when the ideas just pop up and you don't really have to think about it. And what we did, and you'll see that concept coming back in the challenge this week, is the idea of looking at your future. So I always say we have an inner kid, the inner child, and we also have a future best self. Now, that concept is a little less known. Some out there, they use it all the time. But I think I encountered it the first time when getting teachings from Roy Martina, and he was talking about the quantum self. But anyway, the future best self of you is the one who can look back on life at some point, who has dealt with all the disappointments, but also the good things in life, who has obtained all this experience. And when it comes to our future best self, it's easiest to take a role model in mind. So what are the things that we would like to be able to do? And I mean, let's face it, when growing up, it's like children playing mom and dad, or playing hospital. Well, that's what they used to do back in the days. Nowadays, of course, with all the gaming, other things are going on. But you get my idea, right? And it's a way to test the waters, and how do we act? What's the interaction like between one another? But also, what do we like to do? So that's when we start playing musical instruments, for instance. And it's kind of nice to actually nurture that part. And as adults, we often have forgotten it. And it's one of those things when we talk about midlife crisis. I've been wondering for a while, like, is it really a midlife crisis? Or is it that we see our children being nurtured by us, still thinking about their dreams and goals, and then at some point, especially when they start leaving the house, we realize they were going after their dreams, but where's mine? you know and do you get back to the fold, or do you actually go and work on that one thing that is you always wanted to do? And so I'm going to ask you, if you look at your goals and dreams, what is it that you would like to do? And by talking to your inner child, it's amazing what can happen all of a sudden. Now, I talk on behalf of my inner child, or better said, I write and I voice what they're saying. And then when I think about my future self, then usually that's a whole different ball game. My future self is kind of matter of fact. So she's respectful and she's loving, but she's also no nonsense type, because she knows better than to postpone things. And she also knows what my flaws are by now, and what my cop-outs are, what I'm going to say, to not have to do certain things. And it was kind of funny because earlier today, when I started working, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I was like, okay, I'm going to record the videos for the training. Then I'm going to work on one of the offers, and then I'm going to go live. And I knew that I was running the risk of getting into a discussion with the AI, as happens so often, because it gets reset and then all the things that I've been working on is gone. So I basically need to keep a file myself of what we have been talking about, so I can actually use it. And the thing is, it runs with whatever you give it. So focus is not something that the AI has. It runs with the last thing you've given it. So it's important that you are in charge of what it is you want to get out there. Now, me going from left to right and up and down, having an AI do the same thing, well, that's not working out very well for me. So I knew it, and my future self, she already said, yeah, I know how this is going to work out. She needs to do it now, because if she doesn't, then how am I going to get to fruition? And she had a point saying so. And I love this question. What I'm doing right now, will my future self thank me for it? I think that's such a powerful question, whether it's about whether or not you are moving, whether or not you are eating a certain something, buying groceries, and also maybe about playing a musical instrument and actually putting the time in there, or just like Duolingo. Is Duolingo like a spur of the moment thing and you do one lesson a day because, well, then you keep your streak? Or is it like, well, actually I want to learn something, and you keep going on and on and on? And well, then we get back to the question, what happens if you quit doing it and there are no more rewards anymore? So are we still inclined to do it then? Or are we going to quit doing it altogether? Now, rewriting your inner story has to do with all these things, but it starts with your goals and your dreams and what you believe to be true. Now, I believe we are capable of more than we give ourselves credit for. And yes, it might not be easy. I'll never say things are easy. For some they are, for some they are not. But I do believe that given attention, things can improve. And maybe you have a setback, like I do with the walking on a regular basis. But I also know that I know what to do in order to improve things again. And this is about, what are you willing to do for yourself? What are you willing to invest when it comes to time and to effort? And when it comes to Rewrite Your Inner Story challenge, I mean, come on, it's a free challenge. All you have to go is to go to ladylexi.com/rewrite your inner story. And yes, if you happen to want a little bit more, specific handouts, all those kind of things, yeah, then you may want to get the paid version. But, and the videos are only there like 3 days, and it's a 7-day challenge, so 10 days in total. But it's about how much time are you willing to invest in yourself? How much energy? And do you know what you're going to do it for? Well, I want you to think about that one, because that might be one of the most important things in your life. Because you never know what's going to happen if you can keep doing the things that you consider normal. So maybe this is the time to actually start thinking about, hey, what is it that I really wanted to do, but I didn't do because there was no time. Others said I couldn't do it. And you might actually find a lot of joy in there. Let me know. Leave a comment, and I'll talk to you soon.